Welcome to the part of the week that matters the most. It's Wealth Matters, your Wealth Matters message. I'm Warren, I'm a banker in the City of London, and I'm here to make wealth building simple and accessible. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how I ensure that my properties, every time I buy one, is profitable and that I make a good return on them. By the way guys, follow me on Instagram. I post regularly on there and I love to interact with you guys on there. So when I add up the return on my 3 properties that I own over the last 3 years since I started investing in 2018, the total return is approximately £50,000. Now that includes the return from the rise in the capital value plus the rent that I've received over those 3 years. £50,000 in 3 years. Now that's not by accident guys. There is a reason why I chose to invest up north, specifically 2 properties in the city of Liverpool and 1 in Sheffield, rather than in say Bognor Regis or Hull. No disrespect to those 2 cities and towns, but guys, I've been intentional about where I invest and I've used specific tools to inform my decisions. Stick around to the end when I'll show you what those tools are that have earned me these kinds of returns over the last 3 years, and you can get these returns too. So I want to start with a question guys. Do you calculate the return? I'm talking about the profit, the gross yield, the net yield, the return on investment. Do you calculate these numbers before you actually get to your viewings? Because guys, if you're not, you're doing it wrong. Way too many people invest in property on just a wing and a prayer, right? So when we, for instance, when we buy a pair of trainers, when we buy a jacket, we will find that pair in one store and then we'll do some mental triage and say, hold on, it's about 10, 20 quid more in this store than I can get it in this other store just down the road or in a different area. We do the same with cars, guys. If we're gonna buy a car and we want a specific make, model and colour, we are gonna do some online research. And if we see it in one seller and it costs say 10 grand more than it does in another seller, even 5 grand, even 2 grand, we're gonna buy it in the other seller, the cheapest one, because we have value in mind and we do that research. Now, unbelievably, with property, and property is going to be the most expensive purchase of 99% of our lives, not enough of us do that level of research and analysis when it comes to paying the right price, the fair market price, ideally below that. And also when we're assessing how much we're going to actually make off this property. Is a return on investment on this property that you're going to buy, that I'm going to buy, does it justify spending this money? Would I rather put that money into say the stock market or crypto where the return on investment might be better? We don't know until we do those sums. And there's no point guys, no point in turning up to a viewing, going through that process if you haven't actually done that analysis beforehand. Because for me, that analysis beforehand basically tells me whether it's worth my time in actually showing up to the viewing or not. If this property isn't going to earn me the returns that I need, that I expect, I'm not going to go and see it guys, okay? And if you just take one thing and nothing else, one thing from this video guys, what I really want you to take away is to do this analysis, calculate the returns and profits that you're going to make from your properties before you go see them ideally, and definitely before you buy them. So let's talk about some things that are squeezing, that are going to likely squeeze profits and returns that we as landlords or potential landlords like yourselves are going to make from property in the coming years, because there's a good few changes in the UK that are going to affect that. The first thing is base rates, Bank of England base rates. So for those of you who don't know what base rate is, basically it's the interest rate that the Bank of England sets, and they use this as a tool to manage the economy. If you want to hear more on that, watch my economic updates, my monthly economic updates, to see how that works in practice. But what you need to know for this video guys is right now in the UK we're at an historic low Bank of England base rate of 0.1%. It's never been that low, okay? And what's happening right now in the UK economy is that we're experiencing inflation, high levels of inflation that we haven't seen for over 9 years. Why am I telling you this? Because to manage inflation, what the Bank of England normally do is that they increase base rates. How is that applicable to property? Well, when the Bank of England increases base rates, a lot of the mortgage lenders out there, they set their mortgage interest rates off of the Bank of England base rate. So if the base rate goes up, usually 9 times out of 10, your mortgage interest rates are going to go up, especially if you're not on a fixed rate mortgage. And the effect of that is basically landlords such as myself and yourselves, we're going to be paying more in mortgage interest costs, and that's going to mean that we have less profits, i.e. the difference between our rent that we receive and our mortgage costs and our operating costs, so stuff like agent fees, repair costs, etc. We're going to have less money in our pockets if the Bank of England raise base rates, which I think, I'm going to put my hat on it, is going to be very, very likely. So there's more of a need, guys, to assess your properties if you're buying now, to really do that analysis beforehand so that you have healthy margins, healthy profit margins that are able to absorb a rise in interest rates. Secondly, guys, is a mortgage interest relief reduction. So you might be aware of this already, but essentially from 2017 to 2020, what the government did is that they changed the rules for landlords. So prior to 2017, when it came to paying tax, landlords were able to deduct their mortgage interest costs from their rent received for the purposes of tax, so essentially paid less tax. Then from 2017 to 2020, the government basically phased that out. So you are now paying tax on a greater amount. You're no longer allowed to deduct mortgage interest costs from your gross rent for the purpose of paying tax. So today, compared to 2016, landlords are paying more tax. And it's a big reason, guys, why a lot of landlords exited the market. They stopped being landlords, they sold their properties because in their minds, it wasn't profitable anymore. Now, there are ways around that, such as investing via a limited company, and also if you're a lower rate taxpayer. Watch out for my video on that in the next few weeks. I'm actually going to make a whole video talking about how you can reduce your tax costs. But for the purpose of this video, we are now paying more tax as landlords. So again, we really need to do the work up front and be diligent about calculating what our potential profits might be before we invest in a property. And then lastly, let's talk about the C word. No, not that one. I'm talking about COVID. During the last 18 months, rents have fallen considerably across the UK because people are in dire straits, guys. People have lost their jobs. People have gone on to furlough. They've moved back in with parents, etc., etc. Economically, a lot of people across the whole UK, across the world, have struggled financially. And therefore, one of the impacts of that is the rent that we need to pay. You might have asked your landlord to give you a grace period in terms of paying your rent, or reduce the rent even over a period of time. That's happened all across the UK. So again, if you're a landlord, if you're on the other side of the table, the income that you're receiving from your properties has shrunk for a lot of you. And again, more reason to do the work, use tools to calculate your returns upfront before you buy, because if you buy well in a good area that's growing with healthy rents, with healthy margins, you'll be able to absorb void periods or reductions in rent. If it's tight from the beginning, if you haven't even done the analysis and you've bought, you could be in trouble, guys. So I know what you're asking, guys. How do you do this analysis? What are the numbers? What are the metrics that I should be paying attention to? If you haven't invested in property, you might be saying, yeah, that's great. Yeah, okay, calculate your profits. Well, what? How? What numbers do I use? Well, working in banking, guys, I myself, just to give you a little bit of quick background, I work in banking. I have worked in a few different areas. One of them at the beginning was called credit risk, and I worked specifically with companies, and some of which were actual property developer companies. So when it comes to assessing the credit risk, and the credit risk is basically the bank looking at a potential borrower and saying, how likely am I as a bank to get my money back from you? I.e., you might have a poorer credit rating, you might have a history of not repaying on time. The bank's going to be less inclined to lend to you, or they're going to charge you higher interest rates, basically. So part of the analysis that we would do, especially on the property companies, is to look at their projections for the profits that they're going to make through building these developments and renting them out over time, and also their returns. So we're talking about stuff like their yields, which is either the gross income or net income over the cost of the property, or the amount that you've invested in a property. There's different measures of yields. Now, me, having come from that background, I'm very lucky, right? I developed my own tool to assess the properties that I'm buying using the same stringent and careful criteria that the banks used on their actual customers in real life. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If there's ways of doing this that the banks themselves are using, it's a no-brainer for me to use them too. And as I said at the beginning of this video, guys, it's paid off. My return over 3 years has been just over £50,000. And I'm going to keep on using these tools and these calculations, these metrics for all of my future property purchases, because I'm trying to be a millionaire, guys. I'm trying to retire early. I'm trying to build wealth. Now, I'm all about adding value, guys. I've actually developed this tool for you to use, guys. The link is in the description below. But essentially what it does, guys, is that it calculates your potential profits in numerical terms. It calculates your yields, your gross yield, your return on investment. And beyond all that, guys, it gives you much more. It calculates the stamp duty that you're going to pay on a property, calculates all of your operating costs over the course of the year. It's going to give you an overview of whether you're overpaying or underpaying for that property relative to the UK average. So, for example, if I'm looking to buy a 3-bed house in Manchester and it costs, I don't know, say £400,000, what the tool does is that it will tell you what the average price for a 3-bed house is, and you'll see whether you're under or overpaying for that property. And guys, this is a really important one. What it's going to do is that it's going to tell you whether you're likely to pass or fail an application for a mortgage. Now, in the UK, there's specific mortgage criteria that most lenders are required to adhere to, and this is set by the regulator, the PRA and the FCA, and they use specific ratios that borrowers need to fulfill for that. So all included in the tool, guys, you just input a few simple numbers. It takes no more than 10-15 minutes to complete, and it will generate all of that for you automatically, guys. So check it out. I hope it's useful. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, drop a like, subscribe, guys. Follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you guys soon.